Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
This is your host, Alicia Debrell from Insight Media. Today's guest is Susan Blais. She helps leaders of teams learn to create environments where the people can thrive and bring their full force of their talents and gifts to work. This creates success for the organization and fulfillment and joy for the people that work there. She uses a mix of analysis, understanding of human systems, psychology, and a little bit of magic into the workplace to help create a massive success in fulfillment for leaders and their team. So, without further ado, I want to welcome Susan Blais to the show. Hi, Susan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alicia. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So, tell me a little bit about, what type of leaders and organizations do you help?
I help leaders really at every stage of development, from new leaders all the way up through experienced CEOs. The key for me is that I want to work with people who understand and are motivated that getting the very best out of their people is what's going to bring the very best out of their organization and contribute massively to bottom line results. So they need to be attuned to that fact. Fortunately, more and more people in today's marketplace are doing so because things are changing so fast that more is required of our leaders today than ever before.
Definitely. So do you find that most organizations are not running at their full potential because of the leadership, or is it the team?
I often say that it all begins at the top, which I certainly didn't invent that phrase, but I see it, unfortunately, every single day. Truly attuned and enlightened leadership is not as common as I wish it were. So the results in the organizations are not what they could be either. So yes, it does start at the top. And if leaders are not operating at their full potential and aren't helping their people achieve their own full potential in service of the organization's goals, they're never going to reach the potential that they could.
And what are some common denominators that you would find that leaders are struggling with in their business objectives?
I find that there is a critical and dynamic balance required from leaders. A good leader needs to understand that balancing the needs of their people and the business results is what's going to get them to the goal. And I almost think of it like a seesaw. That seesaw moves. It's a dynamic balance. It doesn't stay static. It's almost like a person on a tightrope. They're moving down the tightrope and everything is moving around them. And they need to be able to balance and work that balance between their people and their results. And by doing that, they can achieve so much more. The leaders who struggle are often out of balance one way or the other. For example, in the nonprofits, I often see leaders who just love their people and they're so happy they're there and they're so appreciative of them being there. So there's a lot of weight placed on the people, but they're not necessarily holding them accountable for results. And so they don't achieve what they need to keep the organization on track. On the other hand, our business schools are churning out tens of thousands of MBAs, and often these programs are so focused on numbers and metrics and measurements and spreadsheets and critical analysis of results that they're not focusing on the people. Therefore, the people that are managed by those leaders often feel like they're being used as a tool or, at worst, a piece of office furniture. And therefore, they are frustrated and can't really give what they could to the organization. So it's that balance that really matters.
No, I completely agree. They do teach more about the numbers instead of the work environment, which should definitely be a course than anybody get an MBA.
I would think.
Maybe this is something we can work together and bring to the table. You never know.
Yes, it is truly shocking. And all the people that go through MBA programs, and they might have a seminar or two or a short course on leadership, but then they're going to go out into the world and spend their next 40 years of their careers leading people with no preparation. It really is insane.
I completely agree. So tell me this, how do you help the leaders get clarity for themselves, and then how does that trickle down to their team?
Well, with the leaders, I often work in a coaching way with them. and help them really get insights into their own strengths, what makes them tick, what motivates them and demotivates them, and really get an understanding of how they operate. And then we extend that from them onto their team. So they start looking at their teams and how those people function. And once they get that understanding of themselves and others, then it helps them manage that balance we've been talking about a lot easier. As the leaders get more and more self-aware, they become more sensitive to how their behavior is affecting their teams. For example, we probably all worked for the type of leader who would occasionally detonate and spew all kinds of anger all over the team. You never know when it's coming. It puts people on edge. When I work with a leader and help them understand that whole process and help them learn to manage themselves, they can often then have a much better and more high-functioning team because people aren't living in fear and worried about when the next explosion is going to happen. So that awareness of the leader helps them manage themselves. And also I teach them to really start paying attention to how their behavior directly impacts the people that they work with. Because sometimes people, they don't see it. They're just going through their day and giving orders and blowing off steam, and they don't realize what's that's doing to the people on their teams.
I have seen that before, so I completely agree. I think I've worked for a couple of those leaders.
I think we all probably have at one point or another. It's really no fun, and it's very frustrating.
Agreed. So you also help your clients with an action plan. So what do you mean by action plan? How do you help them create that? What does that mean?
Well, I look at an action plan and a strategy as totally linked. In fact, I call the process I use a strategic action plan. As I worked my way up in the corporate world from receptionist to CEO over 26 years, I became desperate to find a way to create a plan that we would actually use. Similar to going to the AAA office when you wanted to take a drive from New York to Tucson, Arizona. They give you a map and you follow the map. So the system I use is very focused on results, getting a very clear picture of what results we want to achieve. Then the piece that is so important and is missing from so many strategic planning systems is let's also get very, very clear on where are we today in relation to that goal. Because if we're going to Tucson, the route we take and the steps we take to get there will be very different if we're starting from New York versus whether we're starting from London. But people don't often take that into account. They say, well, we're going to Tucson, let's start planning. It's like, well, wait a minute. What are we starting with? Where are we today? What do we have? What do we not have? What do we know and not know? And as we build the type of plan I'm talking about that literally creates a roadmap for everyone to follow, then I encourage, and it's almost impossible not to bring the team into the planning process. So as the team together builds the plan, and every action has a name and a date on it, so it's all focused on doing, then it naturally builds leadership among the team as well, because when people help create a plan, as opposed to having it handed down to them from Mount Olympus, they're definitely going to be more bought into the plan. They know that they are responsible for certain parts because it has their name on it from day one. And they're much more likely to get engaged in wanting to actually do those action items. So I feel that this strategic action planning that I use is a twofold process because it gets a clear focus of everybody on what is the desired end result. And everybody participates in the plan, so it naturally kind of builds leaders in the team as they start to take authority and responsibility for their pieces of the puzzle.
So as far as helping leaders and their teams reach their full potential, how does that work? How are you helping them?
Well, the process of creating a strategic action plan, like I was just discussing, as opposed to problem solving, which I'll talk about in a minute, naturally brings out the best in people and gives them the space to use their talents to the full. Because this way of producing a strategic action plan is focused on creating the results we want, which is a completely different orientation than problem solving. Problem solving is about making something that's not working get better. But what happens often in problem solving is once the pain comes off the problem, it might be halfway solved or 3/4 of the way solved, then people's attention naturally focuses to the next problem that is more painful. But taking a strategic action approach to a business is completely different, where we're just on a creative process. We're going to have an end result in mind, and we will not stop till we get there. It's a completely different orientation. And what I find is that the problems tend to melt away because we're just kind of driving past them, if you will. And it helps the people who are creating these results feel really confident and strong, and they see how it works. So then they're motivated to go on and create the next achievement. And that really helps unleash their creativity and their thought process and makes them feel really good about what they're doing.
So tell me this, what do you find the most difficult when you're trying to get the leaders and the team to, first of all, move in the same direction and get on the same page?
The biggest challenge is often when there are multiple leaders at the top of an organization, especially if they're not completely aligned or even if they're giving conflicting messages and instructions. And unfortunately, this can happen in all kinds of organizations, small and large. What happens then is the team is being pulled to the east and to the west. It's yes and it's no. And they start in one direction and then they're told, no, that's not the way to go this other way. It leads just to gigantic wasted time, effort, and money. And it tends to create a crisis management kind of environment where people are running around putting out fires instead of creating what they want. When there's a case like this, I insist on working with the people at the top first to get them in alignment, or to just assign one person to be in charge, because it's silly and wasteful to have people being given directions to go one direction and then the other. And it's really one of the saddest and most frustrating things I see. And it's all too common, especially in businesses that might be smaller businesses, might have been started by a couple of partners, for example, or they're run by a team of investors. It's so critical for them to all be on the same page and all going in the same direction.
No, that makes sense. So how do you know if you're a good fit for a leader or their organization, or how would they know that you're a good fit? How do you know it's a match?
What I do is I come in and I do a capabilities briefing with an organization. Here's the type of things I do, and not just what I do, but how I do it. It's important that they understand this perspective I have about working with the people to achieve the results. And when I can see that the leaders of this organization really understand that, and they are very committed to making the changes necessary to get the results they want, then I feel like we have a good match. If there's either not a sense of urgency or there's no commitment, such as I have people sometimes say, oh, this sounds like a great program or a great way to approach it, but we've got so many things on our plate, we just don't have time right now, then there's nothing I can do at that point. It's really important to me that the organization is in the right spot, both resource-wise and time-wise for what I bring, and that I can come in then and really make a difference in a very short period of time, because I'm all about providing value for my clients. And if I'm not in a situation where I can do that, then it's not worth my time or their money. So we really have to get a combination of clarity of the goals and where we're going, an urgency that this really needs to be done now, and a commitment from the top leaders in the organization.
Okay, so now that you know that this is a match, what do you start with first in an organization? What needs to be improved on, and where the holes are? How do you find that? Where does this start?
What I'll start with is a very in-depth needs analysis, lots of details about what exactly is the situation in the organization now. I meet individually with every person on the team who is going to be involved in this project. And I want to get their perspectives and I want to get their input, because people will have different views of the organization depending on where they're seated in the organization. It takes some time, but it's very critical to get an understanding of exactly who the people are, what their strengths are, and what is the perspective that they bring. That way I get a 360-degree view of what's going on. I'll also want to see the financials so I can see the impact of what this project may mean to the organization. Because when I present my proposal, which I do after doing all this needs analysis and understanding exactly where they are, then I'm always going to give the proposal based on the value I can bring and the ROI they can expect. Because why would an organization bring in a consultant to create a new plan and to transform their organization if they cannot see a financial benefit? So it's both the people improvement and the financial benefit that I want to show them.
In my introduction, we talked about magic. Tell me this. What's your magic? What sets you aside from the rest of the coaches that are out there? Because I mean, it's a very competitive market. So where's your magic? What makes you the go-to?
I have a unique combination of skills from being in an executive position and from 35 years in business, working my way all the way up from a receptionist to a CEO of a $1 billion division of a Fortune 100 company. So I've been at every level within the organization and have experienced what it's like to work in every level. Combined with that, I have a master's in marriage and family therapy, which is all about human systems and how they work and how people behave when they're in a system, whether it's a functional, well-oiled machine or whether it's a dysfunctional system, and how to create change and manage change. So this combination of skills, along with the fact that I'm a certified coach and a certified Colby consultant, which helps people understand how they take instinctive action or how they do as opposed to how they think or feel, I have this unique ability to look at not only the organization in a 360-degree way, but the people in a 360-degree way. And that insight into what makes people tick is what allows me to work the magic, as I call it, because really understanding these people individually and how they can really contribute their talents to the organization's goals is what I use to help build the momentum and the employee engagement, as it's called these days, and their motivation so that they can really unleash themselves and achieve goals and just blow away the numbers and do things that no one would have expected, because all of a sudden it's the human potential that is unleashed that's getting the job done. I think it's really important for good people to feel like they're doing something meaningful. We spend more time at work than we do with our families, and I want them to be happy, but it's happy in the service of the organization's goals. So it's really important that the individual is aligned with the company's goals and where they're going.
True. Okay. So how do you know that the process is working?
Well, I am often called in to do turnarounds. That seems to be one of the times when people call on me. They're often in either a period of big growth or a merger acquisition or some kind of big transition or change. So I can see that the process is working when the chaos starts to settle down, when the individual members start to focus on achieving results and they start feeling better about it. I can literally see the smiles on faces as opposed to the frowns and those clenched jaws that come from stress. And when the results of the organization start to move in the right direction and eventually get better and better and better as everybody begins to focus their energy on the right things. It's kind of easy to see because the people start to literally feel better, look better. Actually, you can almost see it on their faces, from that look of stress to that happy glow that people get when they're happy to be at work. And then the results start to grow from that, and then people feel better and better, and you create a very positive spiral of achievement and fulfillment.
Can you give me a couple examples of some organizations and leaders and how you help them to achieve their goals?
Yes, I'd be happy to. One organization is a business that has been in existence for about 15 years, and it's several million in revenue, and they had grown quickly to a point that they were not managing the change. The growth kind of got ahead of them. And so people were feeling very stressed. There was not a real strategy as to how the organization was going to move forward. And the owner got into the habit of what I call get a guy, just hiring people that seemed to be good, but not really incorporating them into a strategy. So people were running around, bumping into each other. There were no clear lines of authority. Everyone was frustrated. Results were starting to go down because no one was focused in going in the same direction. There just was not really any effective leadership because the business owner was not really the type to manage the day-to-day business of the business. So I came in to this organization, met with every person, about 25 people on the team, got my 360-degree view from all the different people of what was going on, met with the owners, did my in-depth needs analysis, as I talked about, finding out exactly what the goals of the organization should be that weren't being fulfilled, and then got the assigned leaders of the different areas in the company because they didn't even really have department heads at the time. Assigned leaders to each major part of the company, and then I and the leaders built a strategic plan, which then they could communicate to their teams. And we just had to do some shuffling around with people and so forth. But now we had a clear path and people could move forward and the magic starts to happen pretty quickly, usually within 3 or 4 weeks. And that's what happened in this case. So people now are moving forward. They're achieving their goals. The company's starting to do better and better. And so I get that result of the fulfilled people creating much better results. The owner was very happy. And the owner, because then we hired a manager to basically an operations person to manage the whole business, the owner could step out of that because the owner was not the type to run the business on a day-to-day basis. And now everything is firing on all cylinders. Everybody's happy. And it's really moving ahead and growing their revenue.
Nice. Okay. Well, I like it. It seems like you've had a lot of success.
I have. And it's very fulfilling and rewarding for me because it just kills me that there are so many businesses that are struggling because they don't have effective leadership and an effective strategy. The problem is simple. It's not always easy to fix, but it's simple. And if we can get everything aligned and moving in one direction and get the right leaders in place, then things start to happen really fast.
No, I agree. So tell me this. There's a lot of myths and misconceptions out there about a business leader hiring a coach. Can you clear some of them up?
Sure. It's kind of funny. When I first started coaching, I would tell people I was a coach and they would say, what sport? And business coaching, I think it has been happening for a long time, but it wasn't really talked about or known in the general business arena. So some people either thought it was a sporting coach, or other people might think that hiring a coach is similar to hiring a therapist and that it's somehow an admission of weakness or not having their act together. But actually, the very opposite is true. It's really the best, the most talented, and the most high-performing individuals that hire coaches because the best always want to get better. And even in these organizations I come into where things are not aligned properly, often that leader is a very bright, talented person. They just have not been exposed to the type of leadership that is actually going to move an organization forward. So I find it's really an honor and a privilege to do the type of work I do because the people that I work with are so talented, so bright. And once they see the light and see what they need to change about themselves, they get huge results. And then another misconception is some people think that if I hire a business coach, I'm actually hiring a consultant. There really is a difference between coaching and consulting. Whereas a consultant comes in, you expect that person to get the results for you. You expect them to give you their expertise and their answers and tell you what to do. With coaching, it's different because in coaching, we're actually drawing out the wisdom and the insights from that individual so that they develop their own answers. And that self-awareness becomes a huge key to unleashing their own potential and to operating in a much higher way. So It's kind of like being on an airplane. When they talk about the oxygen mask, they always say put on your own oxygen mask first before you help others. It's just the same with leadership. The leader has to get their own act together, really start understanding themselves and what holds them back from being their best. And then they can start to help their teams do the same. There's nothing worse than an insecure leader who is afraid to have their people outshine them. That creates huge destruction and is something that you see a lot because the leader is afraid that those people will look better than them and take their job or something like that. One of the things we deal with in coaching is helping that leader build their own confidence and realize that the better and brighter the people are that are around them, the better they will look as a leader.
Yeah.
As that leader learns to turn their people loose, they look like a genius because they have these amazing people doing amazing things on their team. And then my final myth, this is actually my pet peeve, and I can rant about this one, is that every single day across the globe, thousands of people are thrown into management with no training, no coaching, or no preparation whatsoever. Because there's this myth that leaders just happen, or that they were born, or that because you're a good salesperson or engineer or programmer or whatever, that now you're the head of the department and you're going to be a great leader too. This is really insanity because an individual performer, no matter how great they are, is using completely different skills than they would to be in leadership. If you look at someone like Lance Armstrong, who won the Tour de France 7 times or something, he's an amazing individual performer. Now, take Lance and put him in the cockpit of a 747 and say, now, Lance, you're the pilot. You've got 100 people back there in the plane and have a nice flight. We're expecting great things from you. Well, if he crashes his bike, he hurts himself. But if he crashes a 747, he hurts a lot of people and destroys billions of dollars in property. And this is what's happening all over the world, where people build a business and they put blood, sweat, and tears into it. And then they entrust huge portions of it to people who don't know how to lead. It is absolute madness. And this is my mission, is to help leaders around the world understand how the skills to be a leader are different from the skills that got them into that position.
I actually still have one more question for you, and I think this is the most important question for any organization out there that needs help. If somebody needs your services, how are they going to get a hold of you?
Well, they can contact my office at 818-444-7744, or they can email me at susan@susanblais.com, which is spelled Blais. I also have a website, which is currently being rebuilt at www.susanblais.com, where there's also a contact me page.
Well, Susan, first of all, I want to say I kind of chuckled a couple of times as a couple of examples that you gave, because I think I worked with almost every leader that you spoke about when I was in corporate.
Yes, indeed.
And I would love to have you on the team over there to help me out. But I love how much passion you bring to the table. This was a great interview, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Alicia. It's been a privilege to be here.
Yes, and any organization that needs to bring not only the knowledge of numbers, and then there's also the knowledge of working with your team and getting them to be on board with you. I think that that's powerful, and the fact that you're able to help organizations with that is fantastic.
Well, thank you so much. It is a real privilege and very, very rewarding when I can see things turn around and everybody get moving in the right direction with smiles on their faces.
That's always a plus.
Yes, it is.
All right, guys, you just heard from Susan Blais, and this is your host, Alicia Debrell from Insight Media. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.